Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. In his first video message since the US strikes on nuclear sites in his country, Iran's supreme leader says nothing significant occurred. Meanwhile, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has defended the attack. Israel's National Security Minister has called for a complete halt of humanitarian aid into Gaza. And protesters claim victory after forcing Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez to change some of their wedding plans in Venice. To our top story, Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei delivered his first video message since US strikes on his country and Iran's ceasefire with Israel. In a speech that was broadcast by state TV, he said nothing significant occurred to the nuclear sites struck by the US earlier this week. Meanwhile, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called the strikes historically successful during a press conference today. Here's more of what Hegseth had to say.
President Trump directed the most complex and secretive military operation in history, and it was a resounding success, resulting in a ceasefire agreement and the end of the 12-day war. There's been a lot of discussion about what happened and what didn't happen. Step back for a second. Because of decisive military action, President Trump created the conditions to end the war, decimating, choose your word, obliterating, destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities. I want to read some of the assessments that have been provided, because whether it's fake news, CNN, MSNBC, or the New York Times, there's been fawning coverage of a preliminary assessment. I haven't had a chance to read it. Every outlet has breathlessly reported on a preliminary assessment from DIA. I'm looking at it right now. Again, it was preliminary, a day and a half after the actual strike, when it admits itself in writing that it requires weeks to accumulate the necessary data to make such an assessment. It's preliminary.
For more on this, I'm joined by Saul Montes-Bradley, VP of Communications at the Gold Institute for International Strategy. Saul, a pleasure to have you on. Iran's supreme leader says his country delivered a heavy slap to the US and that Trump exaggerated what happened to its nuclear sites. What is your response to the message we saw earlier today?
Good evening, Leigh-Ann, and thank you for inviting me here. It's to listen to Ayatollah Khamenei today is a trip down some kind of weird time hole. It makes me wonder how tenuous is his connection to reality. His entire speech, nope, we didn't have any problem here. No, well, we failed in the attacks. We destroyed Israel. They surrendered. It seems to be more the rantings of a lunatic than the expressions of a leader of a country. I think that whatever discussions there may be as to the extent of the destruction of the nuclear sites, there is no question that even before Trump ordered that destruction, the Israeli Air Force could come in and out of Iran unmolested. They completely defeated their air defenses. And for the hundreds of missiles that Iran launched at Israel, the results are quite pitiful. I don't know what situation Ayatollah Khamenei is talking about, but definitely it's not reality.
And I'm hearing what you're saying, and Iran has recognized that its nuclear program was severely damaged, but they've also said that the US strikes only strengthened their determination to complete the nuclear program. Is that a provocation from Iran?
This is, I believe that we have to look at the problems confronting the Islamic Republic from the inside. I think it is a desperate attempt to gather some kind of support, a nationalistic support, when in fact things are crumbling beneath their feet. They have failed to defend Iran. They have failed to carry out their program. I'm sure that, you know, if they had the determination, they could probably get to work again and it would be destroyed again. And now everybody knows it. So this bravado of the regime, it's lacking in substance and probability. They are defeated. And it's only a matter of time before they fall.
Pete Hegseth gave a robust, somewhat angry speech defending the US mission in Iran, and this comes after the leaked intelligence report. Trump was elected on the promise of putting America first. Is the US administration now involved in a forever war after joining Israel in these strikes on Iran?
Well, he was also elected on the promise that Iran would not have a nuclear weapon. And I believe that he has just delivered on that promise. This isn't a forever war. I have trouble grasping the conception of forever wars, since we have wars like the war in Korea that hasn't ended, and we still have 35,000 troops in there. Since 1953. Obviously, World War II is not quite ended in those terms, for we still have thousands and thousands of American soldiers guarding Europe. So what is a forever war is something difficult to define. In this case, the war as such, as military operations, is ended. The conflict continues and will continue for as long as we have a regime in Iran whose purpose is to export its revolution and conquer its neighbors. What Trump did is what he promised to do. And one may ask if Trump went to help Israel or if Israel is helping America, for Iran has been a problem of America's since 1979, and we have thousands of US soldiers and civilians killed, maimed, and taken hostage over the past 46 years in numbers that dwarf the casualties of Israel.
What was the point of Pete Hegseth's press briefing? Was it to tick off the press, or was it to show what the US military managed to achieve during these strikes over the weekend? Because he really went for the media in the US.
Well, probably a little bit of both, actually. There have been reports in the media that, oh, well, the strike wasn't that big. No, we didn't break anything, as you said earlier. Even Iran is admitted that the nuclear program has been severely hit. There are enemies of the administration domestically that seek to minimize, whether you like it or not, the effect of the B-2 mission to Iran. That was done based on a document, on a leaked document that was a preliminary assessment. And as such, it contains a lot of caveats. It's always like that. In the intelligence community, a first assessment made in the heat of the moment contains a lot of caveats because new information may surface to contradict what is being said. And the media, heeding the fact that it was a preliminary assessment, heeding the fact of the very nature of that report, presented it as a final report, and no, we didn't do anything, they can still build nuclear weapons. It's nonsense. I can sympathize with Hegseth's reaction to that. And at the same time, he mentioned a lot of other assessments from Israel, from the Mossad, from the Iranians themselves, from U.S. military intelligence that put to rest the question of whether there was damage or not.
Saul, Montes-Bradley, a pleasure to have your insights. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
We can now go live to Gabrielle Norona, Executive Director of Polaris National Security and former Special Advisor at the U.S. State Department for Iran. A pleasure to have you on. Thank you for joining us. So Iran's Supreme Leader said Iran had slapped the U.S. in the face. How did you interpret this remark and the overriding message that he released today?
Well, Supreme Leader Khamenei and really the Iranian elite system has this very bad habit of misinterpreting what they actually do, of trying to paint a picture for their own domestic audiences of massive victory after every failure, and portraying most of their strikes on Americans as having killed hundreds and hundreds, when in reality they haven't killed an American in the last week, nor did they do so after the Soleimani strike. But there are a lot of Iranians inside the system at elite levels who believe that they killed dozens, maybe hundreds of Americans, both 5 years ago after the Soleimani strike. They believe that they killed dozens or hundreds of Israelis last year in those strikes. And that's caused them to make a series of miscalculations that culminated in what led up to Israel's strike the past 2 weeks, which is they project strength they do not have, and they tempt fate in ways that are dangerous and cause them to get smacked around by their regional neighbors.
Trump revealed the U.S. will be holding talks with Iran next week. Are we likely to see these discussions happen after the Supreme Leader said they would never surrender, repeating that message again? And also after his comments today, would the U.S. still be keen to hold these talks?
Again, the Iranian leaders have to make a lot of statements right now for domestic political purposes. Their leash on power is rather weak. They've had over 30 generals killed by Israel. They've had a number of the regime security apparatus headquarters destroyed. And so they're trying to project strength, but at the same time, they're going to say other things in private. The Iranian leadership has a decision to make right now. Do they double down on the nuclear program and divert spending, resources, and strategic capital on that program, or do they choose to advance their foreign policy by proxies, by terrorism, and sort of more conventional forces? That's a strategic question, which I don't think the answer is clear right now. And the United States is going to want Iran to give up that nuclear program. And if they don't, Israel is going to be free to come back and destroy Iran's nuclear program time and time and time again. So Iran does not have great options. They've lost their entire air defense system. And if they think that they can just rebuild with impunity, they're going to find that that's a mistaken calculus.
So, Gabrielle, do you think that we haven't seen the end of this conflict yet? Is that what you're alluding to there? We can see more missile strikes between Iran and Israel in the coming future?
Well, I think we're going to have a period of peace, probably 3 to 6 months, where I don't expect to see a lot of things flying back and forth. But again, what Israel and the United States have done is, to use the American football term, they've scored a touchdown, but they haven't yet fully won the game. That game won't be won until this regime is gone or the regime totally and permanently dismantles its nuclear program. So at some point, if the regime makes the decision to reconstitute its nuclear program, to go for a weapons breakout, yes, you will absolutely see Israel take action. The question is, will the United States get involved again? I'm a little doubtful that they will. I think there's a lot of interest now from the United States of giving Israel everything that it needs to do unilaterally, but that the United States will move on towards work on China, work in other theaters, and sort of say that we've done our part and the rest is up to Israel.
Let's talk a bit about Hegseth, because we saw him today and he lashed out at the media for challenging the narrative. But Hegseth himself was obviously a TV personality on Fox News. Do you agree that the press should be able to release information that is of public interest, even if it is a preliminary report, and have freedom to do so, or is this highly dangerous?
Look, what they did was highly irresponsible because they didn't even report the full extent of the intelligence. They gave a one-sided characterization of it. They did not admit that it was preliminary. They did not admit that it was a low confidence assessment. And so it was done in a very calculated political effort to try to smear the president and try to degrade the military operation. This was not, responsible reporting by the press. This was a political hack job masquerading as reporting on the public interest. And so I think news outlets have a responsibility when they're dealing with classified information in the U.S. to be responsible. We have a free press. They're legally able to do everything. But with that freedom comes a responsibility. And I don't believe that they acted responsibly in this manner.
I just want to ask you a little bit about this press conference that we saw today. And what does it say about the paranoia inside the Trump administration, really, as Hegseth tried to put to bed what Trump has been so aggrieved about? Because we have seen lots of reports about a split in the MAGA base regarding to the U.S. strikes on Iran and if it should have happened. And it feels like maybe there is some paranoia creeping in.
So there's two aspects here. The first is what we're seeing on American television. If I turn on the TV here, you're seeing wall-to-wall coverage of our major news outlets questioning the impact of the strikes. And I think that's something that both Secretary Hegseth and President Trump wanted to push back on forcefully, which is why you saw so much, again, forceful language from Secretary Hegseth. The second one is that that division within certain elements of the Republican Party. I think it's overstated, however. 84% of Republicans who call themselves MAGA Republicans approved of the strikes, but you have sort of these outsized influencers who are big on the internet, don't have a lot of backers, wanting to degrade the strikes because they want to show that they were stupid, that they didn't work, and that we should never have been involved at all. The president is wanting to make really clear that it was a good decision of his to go and get involved in this, that it was a win for America, it was a win for the military. And so he is fighting both these elements in his own party, as well as the elements on the left who, again, want to sort of portray this all as a defeat, because that's their political modus operandi, to paint anything that strikes Iran, to paint anything that is pushing back on the regime as a failure. And that's been an effort of Iranian propaganda for decades, is to always make them believe that sanctions don't work, military action doesn't work. The only thing that could ever work is appeasement of the regime.
Gabrielle Norona, it's a pleasure to have you on the show and your thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Israel's National Security Minister has called for a complete halt of humanitarian aid into Gaza. He claims that Hamas is taking control of supplied goods. Meanwhile, rescuers say Israeli forces killed at least 35 people in the region. For more on this, I'm joined by our correspondent, Trent Murray from Tel Aviv. Trent, a pleasure to have you on. Can you tell us more about the latest situation with aid in Gaza and what the plans are over the next coming days?
Good evening, Leigh-Ann. Well, this has all started after videos started circulating yesterday showing dozens of masked men riding on several aid trucks in the north of the Gaza Strip. Now, some of them were carrying rifles, and what that has prompted now is this fairly huge decision by the Israeli government to halt aid deliveries into the Gaza Strip, reportedly to avoid the aid being put into the hands of Hamas. That is their rationale. Now, we are being told that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has asked the Israeli Defense Force to come up with a plan within the next 2 days in order to try and prevent some of the scenes that we saw yesterday, but we do know that certainly humanitarian groups on the ground are really concerned about this unilateral decision being made by the Israelis to halt the delivery of food, baby formula, fresh water and the like, given the existing humanitarian crisis on the ground. We are being told that the American-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation does have an exemption, but it is only operating in the south of Gaza. So the focus right now is on the delivery of aid into the northern part of the Strip, where we do know a number of civilians are in need of it.
Yes, indeed, Trent. I spoke to someone from UNRWA yesterday who was explaining the situation in Gaza on the humanitarian front, and extremely distressing news from him. But have Hamas responded to the claims at all?
Well, Hamas are denying that it was actually their personnel involved in what we saw yesterday. Instead, several factions and so-called clans, big families within the Gaza Strip, including the more secular rival of Hamas, Fatah, have actually said it was their personnel on those trucks, and they were doing it to protect the delivery of those aid supplies. So in many ways, it is a kind of denial and a complete opposite argument to what the Israelis are being put forward here. As I say, Hamas is saying right now it was not them riding on those trucks, it's those other groups, those other clans, some of which we know are being armed by Israel themselves to take on Hamas. They are saying they were the ones riding on those convoys to protect the delivery of the aid.
And Trent, it is Hamas have reportedly spoken to the BBC about the ceasefire efforts. Am I correct in this?
You are correct. Some positive signals, cautious optimism, I guess we could say, coming from both camps where it comes to ceasefire negotiations. Now, what Hamas has told the BBC is that they are engaged in intensive contacts aimed at reaching a ceasefire agreement, but they have not received any new proposals so far. Now, what makes this interesting is because President Trump, when he was in the region, has told reporters that he thinks very good progress is being made in Gaza, and that he thinks that there could be a big announcement being made soon. He said Steve Witkoff, his special envoy, is preparing to deliver some good news. A truce is potentially close. We are being told once again it is Egypt and Qatar who are trying to bring the two sides together here in order to not just reach a ceasefire within the Gaza Strip, but from the Israelis' perspective, to try and get some of their hostages home also.
And there have been more Israeli strikes today, Trent. What more do we know about these?
Yeah, so Gaza's Civil Defence Agency is reporting now that that earlier toll of 35 has climbed to 56 throughout the day. People in the Gaza Strip being killed from Israeli fire. A spokesperson for the Civil Defence Agency is saying that 6 of those people were waiting for aid in 2 separate locations. Now, the IDF has not commented on these strikes today, but we do know we've seen multiple reports, haven't we, of people lining up for aid, particularly at that American-backed GHF distribution points in the south, where there are reports of Israel opening fire onto the crowds. It would appear today, according to the Gaza Civil Defence Agency, there has been a similar situation take place. The IDF undoubtedly will release a statement later in the day about that. We have not received it yet, but that will, I think, underscore those concerns about the humanitarian situation on the ground, not just when it comes to safety for people trying to seek it, but this recent news of it actually being halted, the deliveries, after what we heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu overnight.
And Netanyahu has asked a court to postpone his testimony in his long-running corruption trial, and that's due to the situation in Gaza and with Iran. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, regional and global developments, his lawyer told the court, were the reasons that the Prime Minister couldn't attend the trial into those corruption allegations. In this statement, this filing that we have from Netanyahu's lawyer, it says the court is respectfully requested to order the cancellation of the hearings in which the Prime Minister was scheduled to testify over the next coming 2 weeks. According to his lawyer, the Prime Minister is compelled to devote all of his time and energy to managing national, diplomatic and security issues of the utmost importance. Now, the court will have to make a decision on that, but in many ways he did get a very powerful backer seemingly supporting that request. President Donald Trump posting on Truth Social that the trial should be cancelled immediately and a pardon given to a great hero, referencing Netanyahu there after the end of the war. President Trump described this corruption trial as a witch hunt. Prime Minister here has expressed his thanks to Donald Trump, his heartfelt support for me and your incredible support for Israel and the Jewish people, a statement put out by the Prime Minister following that extraordinary intervention into Israel's legal system by the President of the United States.
There's always so much news. Correspondent Trent Murray, thank you so much for being across it all for us. Now, the murder trial of an Australian woman accused of poisoning her relatives using the world's most toxic mushroom is nearing its dramatic conclusion. Justice Christopher Beale is delivering his final instructions to the jury and says he expects members will be sent out to deliberate as early as Monday next week. Patrick Falk reports.
Key personnel in a case that's gripped Australia seen leaving court. Crown prosecutor Nanette Rogers kept her head down as she departed. Defence lawyer Colin Mandy's expression gave little away. For the past 8 weeks, they've argued for and against 50-year-old Erin Patterson. The mother of two is accused of lacing a beef Wellington lunch with death-cap mushrooms to elderly relatives of her estranged husband, killing 3 of them. Dozens of people have turned out daily for a seat in the public gallery to witness a trial peppered with drama.
Yeah, so I am a true crime fanatic, so I do take my true crime quite seriously. I don't think I really appreciated that a case of this magnitude was playing out in my own state, so that's what intrigued me, that's what fascinated me.
So while the trial's gone for 8 weeks, it's been interesting to sit through yesterday and hear the way the judge summarised everything.
On Thursday, Justice Christopher Beale told the jury to dismiss a key prosecution argument that if Erin Patterson's children had eaten scraped-off meat from the lunch, they would have experienced symptoms. He said there was no expert evidence on whether that would be the case. But he also reminded them of her alleged incriminating conduct, including lying about using dried mushrooms from an Asian grocery, disposing of a dehydrator at the local tip, and handing police a secondary phone instead of her main one, which hasn't been found. All macabre details that have made the town of Morwell, 2 hours east of Melbourne, a centre of global attention and helped local businesses boom.
It's been talked about, and everyone's got an opinion about it, so life will go on, life moves on, and the town will go back to what it was before, and that'll be it.
The big question on people's minds, how did the death cap mushrooms end up in the meal? Ian Wilkinson is the sole survivor of the 4 guests who dined with Patterson. He's the uncle of her husband, Simon, whose parents and aunt were poisoned to death. Had he not survived, it may have been difficult piecing together events that led to the tragedy. Patrick Falk, Al Arabiya.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. US Special Envoy for Syria Tom Barak says the US is keen on giving Syria's new government the chance to prove itself. Speaking with Al Arabiya, he said the US aims to protect the Syrian government from Iranian-backed groups. His pledge comes after President Trump issued a sanctions waiver for Syria whilst in Saudi Arabia last month. The success of New York City Mayor Democratic candidate Zoran Mdani has drawn rage after criticism from President Donald Trump. In a series of social media posts, Trump mocked Mdani's appearance and called him a communist lunatic. The 33-year-old's victory means he's set to become the first Muslim mayor of the city. Now, North Korea is opening a beach resort that its leader Kim Jong-un hopes will boost tourism. Wonsan Kalma on the east coast will open to domestic tourists from the 1st of July. State media claims that the resort can accommodate up to 20,000 visitors. However, North Korea is yet to fully lift the ban on foreign tourists it imposed in 2020. And the James Bond movie franchise has appointed Denis Villeneuve as the director of the next film. The head of the Amazon MGM Studios, Mike Hopkins, described the four-time Academy Award nominee as a cinematic master. Two recently appointed producers said securing a director and developing a screenplay were top priorities before deciding who would succeed actor Daniel Craig. Protesters in Venice are claiming victory after they forced Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez to change some of their wedding plans. The main celebration, originally expected to take place in the heart of the city, will now be moved to an isolated area. The billionaire Amazon founder and his fiancée arrived this week for a three-day event that's expected to be attended by celebrity guests. For more on this, I'm joined right now from Venice by journalist Alina Trabattoni. Alina, wow, what an amazing location in Venice. Absolutely spectacular view. Tell us the latest about the protesters and give us some detail on exactly why they have decided to rally against this wedding in Venice. Absolutely spectacular location.
Well, I would say that the protesters have achieved their aim, which is to make their protests heard. And it must be said that it's not so much the wedding itself that is going to be contributing to over-tourism, because at the end of the day, Bezos's wedding list only has 200 guests, which by any standards, and particularly Italian standards, is a very low number. The real issue here is what Bezos actually symbolizes. Multinationals, the inequality, that's the rising inequality that's spreading across the globe, the fact there are many multinationals that are tourist shopping around the globe for fiscally attractive locations, and not taking into account where they're actually working. So they have taken this opportunity to make their grievances heard. Now, the location of one of the events, the Sunday event, has been changed to the Arsenal of Venice, which is a shipyard complex with a very high fortified wall around it, which is impossible to get into or out of if you want to. Unless you have the permission and access and guided entrance and exit. So that will be very secure. But right behind me is where the celebrations will be kicking off tonight. Behind me, and it's already in lockdown, local authorities have put it into lockdown now. There's police all over around surrounding the area and also in the canals. Is the Santa Madonna dell'Orto Chiesa Church, and the celebrations tonight will be kicking off in a cloisters right next to it. We may even start seeing the first guests come in.
Well, that's what I was about to actually ask you, Alina, because I have been watching all the celebrity pages and I can see everyone who's arriving. Orlando Bloom's there, the Kardashians are there, Tom Bradley's there, Scooter Braun, you name it, Ivana Trump. So, as you said, what can we expect? Do you have any more details on the plans, the cost? I heard Oprah might be attending.
Oprah has arrived, so has Bill Gates, amongst the others you mentioned. Barbra Streisand is rumored to attend, so is Elton John. Now, Bocelli Jr. Jr. will be performing. Andrea Bocelli's son will be one of the performers at the wedding. And it's also rumored on the ground that perhaps one of the Bee Gees, I think the only one that's still alive, may be performing. So it's a very, very special 3 days. Now, the couple have booked out five-star luxury hotels, the Amman Hotel on the Grand Canal, the Danieli, the Cipriani, and several others, where all their guests and their family, closest family and friends are staying during this period. Everything really kicked off last night with a sort of rehearsal dinner, if you would have it, of the people that had already arrived, including Ivanka Trump, her husband, and their 3 children, at Diane von Furstenberg's palazzo, aristocratic palazzo here in Venice. And today there will be this event at the cloisters next to the Madonna dell'Orto church. And tomorrow things will start taking up a notch when everyone relocates to the island of San Giorgio, where there's a stunning, very lushly vegetated area belonging to the local Cini Foundation, where the guests will be celebrating. And it does seem there will be some sort of symbolic ceremony there tomorrow night. And then, of course, tomorrow evening, there's reports of fireworks and incredible water visuals displayed on the canals. But I must say that everyone involved in organizing this wedding is under such tight non-disclaimer agreements, NDAs, that very little actually leaks out officially. But so a lot of the information is information that can be gleaned on the ground, seeing how things are being organized and so forth. And lastly, on the final day, the guests will be going to the Arsenal of Venice, the area where the Bezos party decided to relocate part of the celebrations after Greenpeace, Extinction Rebellion, and several others staged a rather visually dramatic protests, including a dummy of Bezos and an Amazon package floating in the canal, and Extinction Rebellion draping a protest sign on a crane above the Danieli 5-star hotel. Now, the cost of this wedding, there's a lot of speculation as to how much it could cost. There's nothing official, but the figures that are being bandied about start from $30 million, and they go up as far as $53 million. But as one Venetian artisan said to me, for someone like Bezos, he's getting married. It's a very, very special day. For a multi-billionaire, it's possibly like going out for dinner, spending that sort of sum on a wedding.
Alina Trabattoni, I hope you get to spot some celebrities and have a really fabulous time in Venice. What a time to be there. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's okay.
Let's take a look at the top business news now. The dollar has sunk to a 3-year low, while world stocks notched their second record high in 3 days on Thursday. This follows a report that Donald Trump was planning to choose the next Federal Reserve chief early as he pushes for rate cuts. Dollar selling continued after the Wall Street Journal said the US president was thinking of selecting Chair Jerome Powell's replacement in the next few months ahead of his formal departure in May next year. European Union leaders are to be presented with a choice by the European Commission in Brussels today: get a quick trade deal with the US at the cost of Washington getting better terms, or escalate the fight in the hope of getting something better. A fast agreement seems to be the preferred option for EU leaders, as they also consider digital tax on US tech giants as a rebalancing option. Turning to the sports news now, and Cristiano Ronaldo has extended his contract with Saudi club Al Nassr, ensuring he will play beyond his 42nd birthday. The Portuguese star, who joined the club in 2002, has scored 93 goals and 105 appearances across all competitions. The club announced the extension on Thursday, highlighting Ronaldo's continued impact and commitment to the team's success. And a reminder of our top stories. In his first video message since the US strikes on nuclear sites in his country, Iran's supreme leader says nothing significant occurred. Meanwhile, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has defended the attack. Israel's national security minister has called for a complete halt of humanitarian aid into Gaza. And protesters claim victory after forcing Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez to change some of their wedding plans in Venice. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also follow us on X. We'll be back in a couple of hours' time with W News Extra. Goodbye and thank you.